Hey guys, Chairman here with a deck profile on Lycoris Recoil. Finally getting to this deck profile. It's super late, I know. I really wanted to take my time with this one because I wanted to make sure the list was perfect because this is the set I care about so much. It's like I'm so excited about this set, and so I iterated on it a lot. I played a lot of games, won a lot of games, and recently I went undefeated, which gave me like a good excuse and good time to be like, all right, finally, let's put this video out. So this deck list has had a lot of success by me personally. I went undefeated this past week, but before that, I was always going 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 for like an entire month, so a lot of wins. The win record of this deck is great. And I also passed this list on to a friend in Japan, and he got first place at a local shop tournament there. It was a pretty big one, I think, too. So just to show you that this list isn't just seeing success in my hands, it's seeing success, around the world even. And I think the choices I made in this list is really good, and I'll try to explain as much of it as I can. Now, before we begin, if you're a fan of Lycoris Recoil, the anime, and you want to get to know the set a bit more, I did a video recently on the flavor of Lycoris Recoil. If you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. I guarantee you it's worth your time. I think it's a really good video. I worked really hard on it as well, so go check that out. Anyways, let's get right started. This is the Lycoris Recoil deck box that I have. It's such a beautiful deck box featuring the TD art and some other stuff, and it houses this gigantic triple sleeved max rarity Lycoris Recoil deck. So pretty excited to show off all of these cards in this video. Alright, so first, starting at level 0, we have the Takina JC. This card is fantastic. 4K on your turn and just a JC. Really good at controlling the level 0 game and also giving you great ways to get advantage back in the mid to late game, denying reverses, all that good stuff. Auto 4 of, I think, in basically every Lycoris Recoil deck. Next, I'm playing the Takina Stock Bomb. This is kind of an interesting choice. A lot of people are playing the runner. I don't like the runner at all, actually. I don't think I would ever play the runner unless I had no other red available. The runner is 1/5 free runner, which is great going first because then it basically always gets to live unless your opponent trifields. But anytime after literally going first, I think the runner is really bad. It can't really kill anything. And then the plussing advantage effect is pretty good, but it is only salvage, which is not great because you don't have that many good options in the early game to salvage. And also it pays 1 stock. So the thing about Lycoris Recoil is after playing it a lot, stock is a huge issue and hand is not an issue at all. So if I have a way to get hand without using stock, it's way better. And that's what this stock bomb offers us. So the way to get hand with this stock bomb is if it gets reversed, you can send it to your clock to reveal the top card of your deck. And if it's Lycoris or weapon, you can just add it to your hand. Now obviously that can miss on climaxes and events. It doesn't miss on the 1/0 yellow event, but it'll miss on every other event. But the way you mitigate that is you make sure that anytime you would miss, it means you're going to guarantee cancel an attack. With that, so basically, if you're letting this get reversed during your turn, you want to make sure it gets reversed at the last attack. So then if you miss, that means you're going to cancel your opponent's first attack. And then on your opponent's turn, if they kill this last, then generally speaking, I don't use the effect unless I want to try to draw a climax. Because if I miss, then that means I'm drawing a climax, right? Which I don't want to do if I'm not trying to draw a climax. But if they attack into this, either first or second, and it gets reversed, then I usually use the effect because even if I miss and reveal climax, it means I'm going to cancel the next instance of damage. So just basically, by using it that way, you're just going to take way less unnecessary damage, and you're still going to get a decent amount of the plussing because it's not going to miss that often. And then also being a stock bomb means it can just get rid of anything at level 0. So yeah, between these two cards, I basically hard remove every single level 0 my opponent plays all the time. Also with the Majima, because the Majima is big. So yeah, I think the level 0 game of this deck is really, really good. I like having a really strong level 0 game. Next, 3 copies of the Kurumi, the Brainstormer. Love this beautiful sign. She's a really good Brainstormer, Salvage Brainstormer, and has the top check 2 effect. When you play a climax, you can look at your opponent's top 2 cards and rearrange them. Not really relevant until the final turn, but it can come up in the mid game when you play a climax. Just make sure you move if you play a climax and you see a climax, you move the climax to the top so that they cancel first card and they have a better chance of taking the next instance of damage. It's just like a small thing, not too big, but it'll come up and it'll add up over many games. It's really good in the final turn. I'll talk more about it in the final turn. Alright, next we have 2 copies of the Majima 3/5. I think this card is really good. A lot of people don't run it for some reason. I think this card's super underrated. Plus 2k on your turn if you play it and you have another character. So 3/5 beater. It's just fantastic at beating over stuff at level 0. And then when it gets reversed, you can discard any card to look at up to top 4 and add a Lycoris or weapon. So it's basically the Akatsuki profile except on reverse. And on reverse is actually a pretty good timing for the Akatsuki profile because you can do it during combat and then you can mill as much as you want. So like if you like do it during combat and you trigger like a pants and that's your last climax, then you can run this in and then ditch it, go through the rest of your deck. So you just have a lot of control over your deck speed, and it's also just really good. It's also red fix because you need a lot of red in this deck, and we don't have that much red outside of that card. All right, next we're playing 2 copies of Fuki and then 2 copies of the Mizuki. So these 2 cards kind of work together because they're both like minus power, and together they can create some like really crazy scenarios for you at level 0. So the Fuki gives all your characters, when they direct attack, you can minus 1000 power anywhere to your opponent's front row. And the Mizuki, when you play it, you can minus 1000 to any card on your character on your opponent's front row. So if your opponent has like a 1000 or lower power character, you can use the Mizuki to pop it. That gives you the direct lane. And then that direct lane allows Fuki to give your characters, when they direct, to minus 1000 power to something else. So if your opponent has a full board of like 500 or 1000 power characters, you can just wipe their entire board without even going into battle. So that like denies on reverse effects, it denies a bunch of other stuff, right? So that's really cool. And this is also just kind of ways to get extra power for your cards by minusing power for your opponent cards. This is also a Fukujiro, and then this is as an act. You can send it from field to clock to look at the up to top 4 cards and add a Lycoris or weapon. So it's very similar to the Administrator from Sword Art Online, except the Administrator adds level 1 or higher, which you can grab events, but we don't need events, and so this is way better because it can grab level 0. And it also fixes for blue, and it also hits us a level up. So like if we're at like 2-5, it's pretty easy to get to 3-0. So it's hard to get level locked with this deck, so having Fuki is like really good. And then if you're playing Fuki, I think Mizuki gets a lot better. If you're not playing Fuki, Mizuki is like a lot worse. But I just think these 2 cards together is just like really, really strong. And I would 100% play them together like that. Alright, next we're playing one of each climax swap. We're playing the Mizuki one from the TD, and we're playing the Sakana Takina one from the booster set. But between the 2, the Mizuki one is actually way better, even though the Takina is a submarine. So when you play it, if your opponent has one of your characters in front row, that's cost 0, I think. Cost 0? Yeah, cost 0 or lower characters in the front row, 1 or fewer, you can send it to bottom deck, which is pretty good for removal if you're going second and they play like a runner or something. However, I don't think it comes up that much, and it doesn't really matter because your level 0 game is already so strong. Going second with the JC and like the Sock Bomb and the Majima, that you don't really care about the submarine effect. The problem with this this climax stock opposed to this one is that this costs stock, this one doesn't, and hand's not an issue. So if I were to cut one of these, I would definitely cut the Takina one. I'd keep the Mizuki. Mizuki is just really good. Especially alongside this Mizuki, which is the last level 0 we're playing. It's the double drop search from the trial deck. So on play, on death, you can drop search for any card. Just really great for utility, hand fix, gets us the cards we need. So I think a really cool thing you can do if you have these 2 cards in your opening hand and you have the wrong climax, you can drop search for a level 1 combo, then play this Mizuki, send this to waiting room to swap to the right climax, and then when this gets sent to waiting room, you can drop search for another level 1 combo. So by just having these 2 cards and the wrong climax, you can go into double combo plus the right climax. And that's only 2 stock. So it's like crazy how like synergistic this whole thing is. So definitely like that a lot. And so this is my level 0 lineup. A lot of the zeros, I think it's really good. I think we're at 18 zeros. Let's see, 7, 10, 16, 19 zeros. Yeah, but I think this is a pretty good number, and it just feels really good. All right, level 1 combo, I am playing the double rare from the blue double rare from the set. I think it's the best level 1 combo, specifically for the top check to rearrange afterwards. It's just so good because if you attack with it last, you can make sure you don't trigger a climax, and you can guarantee cancel your opponent's first attack. The top check rearrange allows you to also choose your trigger for a lot of your attacks, if you want to trigger soul or not soul. And then also it kind of allows you to set up your mill, because whatever you're not triggering is what you're milling for your next copy of the combo. So I think that's just really good. And then it also sets up for our 1-0 Chisato. We're running 2 copies of this. When you attack with it and you have a climax in play, you can reveal the top card of your deck if it's level 1 or higher. You can send that card to stock. So this will set up that. 2 copies of this and 1 copy of this basically gets you 2 hand and 1 stock for the most part. So it's really good. I think this is a really strong level 1 turn. They're all pretty big as well. So you can beat over a lot of stuff. Yeah, just a really solid level 1 combo. I just like this way better than the other combos. And then playing 2 copies of Majima. I think Majima is crazy good, and in some matchups it just basically allows you to completely like dominate the game. Specifically the Alice matchup, I think without this card is kind of losing, and with this card it's actually pretty winning for us, because Alice will generate a ton of stock and then we'll just crash our entire board in and basically get as much stock back. So the Majima gives the characters in front of it the ability, when they get reversed, if you have less stock than your opponent, you can send that character to stock. So yeah, basically it allows you to catch up in stock to your opponent, and allows you to use stock pretty proactively, and then just crash stuff in just to get all the stock back. So like if you think about it, this is basically 2 stock every turn, if you can be less stock than your opponent. So against decks where they generate a ton of stock, we just basically get all the stock. Yeah, it's like our stock, right? It's really good. And then also has pay to salvage, so basically a very high floor. If you don't have any playables, you can always use this to get a playable. And then the stock, you just always get it back because it gives the characters in front the stock charge effect. Yeah, it's just so good, so good, so good. And then playing 1 copy of the Takina anti-change stock bomb. I think it's just a good one of, because it's pretty easy to get yellow, and then with the Majima, anytime we crash something in, there's always a good chance we can get stock back. So it's kind of like a free anti-change bomb, and if you think about it that way, if you have the Majima already, so it's not bad. And then we're playing 1 anti-change counter. I think the 1 anti-change counter is good because it's pretty easy to salvage off the level 1 cigarette combo. And then ditch 2 anti-change is great because we don't care about our hand situation, we only care about stock, and the fact that this doesn't cost any stock means it's really playable for this deck specifically. Alright, level 2, we only play 1 card, which is the Mizuki. I think the Mizuki is the only card you need at level 2. Level 2 bomb, which is good against like Alice and some other matchups. And then on play half Fumio, so pay 1, ditch 1, your opponent leaves 1 climax out and then shuffles everything else back in. So it can come up. I don't usually play this card, but when it does come up, it's good. Otherwise, it's a soul trigger and it's a hit for the 1-0 Chisato. So I think it has enough utility and comes up enough that it's worth the one of DECKLOG. Alright, next we're playing 3 copies of the early play Chisato. I think this card is fantastic. As an early play, it is 4 or more other early play, which is a really good early play condition. The heal is not heal to stock, which is kind of like my only gripe with it. If it was heal to stock, it'd be way better in this deck. But then the power condition is really easy. You just need to have one of the JC in the waiting room, and then you can get power or 3k power cross turn, which means it's 11, both attacking and defending, which is really good. It means that it's kind of hard to remove, gets over most things. And then you don't really care that you're spending that much stock with the early play heals as long as you have the Majima up, because again, the more stock you spend, the lower stock you have than your opponent, then you'll always be able to get that stock back, which is really good. So yeah, I think 3 early play heal is really good. Allows you to stabilize at 2 really well and like play an elongated game. We can hit our opponent up to level 3 while we're at very low 2 with this card. It just fits the deck's playstyle a lot, I think, because I stopped clocking really early, and then by this using this I can generate a really big damage lead, which I think is really good for this deck. And then onto the rest of our level 3s, we're playing 4 copies of the Chisato and 3 copies of the Takina. So this is our level 3 combo of choice, the Chisato Takina combo. I'll kind of talk a little bit more about it. We've done the math, and double Chisato single Takina is way better than double Takina single Chisato. So double Chisato single Takina, it's 5 attacks, 4 mills, and it's 8 stock and 5 hand at the start of main phase. Whereas double Takina single Chisato is only 4 attacks, and it is also it's 6 mills instead of 4 mills. But then the mill is not, because the mill is not guaranteed damage, it's not actually that good to mill that many more times unless your opponent's super compressed. And it's only 6 stock, which is the kind of the selling point, but it is way more hand. And the cards in hand have to be specific cards, way more than the other one where you can basically have a lot of like random discards with the Chisato. For the double Takina single Chisato, you actually need 3 Chisatos, 1 to play and then 2 to marker with the Takina effect. So it's a lot harder to sculpt for, even though it's like 2 less stock. I think it's actually way more difficult to do. And with the double Chisato, the way the combo turn works is you have 2 Chisato, 1 Takina, and then when you play the climax, you can use the Kurumi effect to top check 2 for your opponent's deck. If you see a climax, always put it on top and then attack with the Chisato first to mill it off and burn 1. But if you see 2 clean cards, even if you see a level 0, you should always attack with Takina first, don't attack with the Chisato, because you don't want Chisato to be attacking and milling a clean card. You always want Chisato to have the chance to mill a climax, because that's how you get the most damage potential with the card. And if you see 2 clean cards, it means that if their third card is not a climax, then the Takina is going to land at 3 3 soul swing, and then the rest of their deck is going to be way more compressed and have way more climaxes, which you can attack the Chisato into that compressed part of their deck, right? So I think it's just as long as you keep that in mind, that if you see 2 clean cards, you always attack with Takina first. I think the finisher is like it has like way more potential than it otherwise might look on paper. All right, and then 1 copy of the Kurumi. This is the Shuffleback stock swap, and also on play bounce, so double utility, pretty good. The Shuffleback stock swap is not as good as like a traditional stock swap where the stock goes to waiting room and then they stock from deck, because that one actually mills them cards, and then when they refresh, their compression is way worse. So this never makes this doesn't get them closer to refresh, which is not great in that sense. But this is better doing it blind, because if you do a normal stock swap and you don't get them to refresh, then it's actually not really that. You don't actually guarantee like it doesn't actually really affect their deck. If you use a traditional stock swap but you don't get them to refresh, then you're not actually affecting their deck state, because you're just moving a random number of cards from the top of their deck to like the bottom of their deck, or you're not actually decompressing them really in any meaningful way. It's just random. Whereas if you use this, no matter what, at worst they're gonna be the same compression. And if you take 1 or 2 climaxes out with this kind of stock swap, it's like way better, because yeah, it's just like you can do it blind and there's no like repercussion or downside to it. So it has its pros and cons. Generally speaking, the other stock swap is better, but especially like with Afumi and stuff. But this is still pretty good. It still can come up, and it's not a bad use of your resources. And plus it's double utility, which is really nice. And then last, playing 1 copy of the the Takina. So top check X, add anything, and then on attack pay ditch 2 to burn 1. I think this card is really good because the way I play, I don't clock. Starting from like late level 1 and basically all level 2, I just don't clock because I don't need cards in hand. But because of that, it's pretty hard for me to draw climaxes, especially the finishing climax. So if I go into final turn, I don't have the finishing climax, the door. This helps me get to the door, and is also a pretty good attacker because it has that extra instance of damage, that extra burn. Yeah, so I think it's always good to have this. Like after adding this, my finishing turns became way more consistent. It's really good. And also, if you do 1 Chisato, 1 Takina, and then this Takina, it's only 6 stock. So it lowers the resources needed a lot, and it's really nice. Alright, and then the climaxes, 4 copies of the level 1 pants, and then one of each of the door climaxes for the finisher. I love how they did this. This is so cool, by the way. Yeah, just like the one of each. Oh, it's so nice. Alright, so that's the deck. I think this deck is really good. It's really consistent, has a really high floor, and then the finishing turn ceiling is also pretty respectable. So this is a really fun deck, really good. I have great results with it. I think it's really consistent. It's really powerful. You cancel a lot between the level 1 combo, and then also just like being able to maintain your deck state really easily with all your mill at level 0. So yeah, I think it's a fine deck. Probably like not like the best in the current JP meta, but definitely pretty high, pretty up there. However, with the new PRs that we're getting for the set, which are coming in, I think like special Lycoris Recoil tournaments in Japan, so it'll be kind of hard to get stateside. But once we get those PRs, I think this deck rockets to the top, because the Chisato PR specifically, which turns off burning 4 or more for both players, is so good. Like it just auto wins certain matchups, especially like the really strong matchups in the game right now, which are pad, key, and D side. So a lot of those matchups just auto lose to us now, because if we stick a few copies of the Chisato, they have no way to kill us. And then I think the Takina is also really good because it gives us power. So it's on play, you reveal top card of your deck if it's Lycoris or a weapon. You can assign 3k anywhere. The fact that you can assign 3k anywhere is crazy, because you can make your JC attack for 7k, your level 1 combo attack for 10-5. So it gives us a lot of on-turn power that this deck is otherwise lacking. And then also you can on-play pay 1, and you can remove a trait from your opponent's entire board. So a lot of minus traits are either events, which are hard to activate and utilize, or they just remove a trait from a single character. But the fact that this Takina removes a trait from the entire board is insane. So yeah, and some matchups just auto lose to having their traits wiped. And so I think with the advent of those 2 cards, I think this deck just becomes crazy good, because you have these matchups that you just 100% just like swing in your favor, and it's like very hard for your opponent to recover. Now, to make room for those 2 cards, I actually do have the cuts ready. So let's first talk about the Chisato. So in order to make room for the Chisato, I think you should cut one copy of the Majima. The Majima is really good in some matchups, but not that good in other matchups. And in the matchups that is really good in, it's pretty easy to just like sculpt for it and then just land it. And the Chisato is also a global 500, and it like acts as a back row card, so it fights for space with the Majima. And I think the Chisato can come up in more matchups where we just want the global 500 power, just generically, and so we don't need actually 2 copies of the Majima. In this deck, we play 2 copies because it's our only other back row, but once we have other good back row options, we don't need 2 copies. And then the second thing we can cut is we can cut the second climax swap. And between the 2 climax swaps, I think Mizuki is just way better. I would cut the Takina climax swap. So if you cut these 2 cards, we have room to play 2 copies of the Chisato at level 0. And that just gives us the added win con against the burn 4 or more decks, as well as extra global power during both players' turn, and the ability to sculpt for like color because it can level swap. So it's really good for some of the other Lycoris Recoil decks. But in our deck, the level swap is just mainly to make sure that we have the right colors to play all the cards that we need to play. And then in order to make room for the Takina, I think we just want 1 copy of the Takina because it's just good like as a one-time thing, and it's always easy to get back with the level 1 combo and other things. I think we can cut down the stock bomb Takinas to 2 copies because 2 copies are already pretty good. We'll be able to see it when we need it. And then the new blue Takina is a attacker at level 0, so we definitely can replace an attack for another attacker. And by doing that 1, we have enough room to play the Takina, and then I think that just solidifies a lot of matchups where the traits matter, and just turning off traits. Like for example, Alice, right? If you turn off traits for the Alice deck, then the Alices are just like 6k power on defense, and they're like super weak. We can actually like attack and beat over the Alice board pretty easily with our level 1 combo. So that's just like an example of like, yeah, like minusing trait is crazy good in some matchups, and yeah, there's like, it's like I can't even list them because they're just like so strange. Like nobody really thinks about them because nobody has access to minus trait like easily, and so I think Lycoris Recoil having access to it on a character is like, it's just insane. I think it'll just break so many matchups. So once we get these cards, I think this deck is absolutely S tier. I can't wait to get the cards, and I'm really excited to play the deck with those changes. So yeah, that's the deck profile. If you guys have this set and have not been finding success, I invite you guys to give this list a whirl and see how you like it. Obviously, you can still tweak a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff is still moving parts. You can tweak, add more of cards that you like and dislike. But something like this is a pretty good place to start with, I think. And if you don't have this set, I mean, just look at these beautiful cards. Don't you want this set? So yeah, hope you guys have fun trying this out and seeing it for yourself. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.